We have all seen Jurassic Park. We all know the story of scientists playing God to bring back the dinosaurs. But what if I told you that this is no longer science fiction? Right now, in laboratories across the world, geneticists are working to reverse death itself. They are not just looking at bones. They are looking at DNA to resurrect species we thought were gone forever. Today, I'm going to show you 10 extinct animals that science wants to bring back, and the incredible, terrifying lengths they are going to in order to do it. Number 10. The Pyrenean Ibex. Most people think de-extinction is a dream for the future, but for this animal, it has already happened. The Pyrenean Ibex, locally known as the was a magnificent mountain goat that lived in the jagged cliffs dividing France from Spain. They were famous for their immense, lyre-shaped horns and a supernatural ability to cling to vertical rock faces where predators could not reach them. But while they could escape wolves, they could not escape humans. Hunters saw their massive horns as the ultimate trophy. Therefore, they flocked to the mountains to claim them. By 1999, the entire ancient lineage had been reduced to a single living female named Celia. She wandered the cliffs alone, the last of her kind, until a tree fell during a storm and crushed her in the year 2000. With her death, the species was officially extinct. However, the story did not end there. Before Celia died, scientists had captured her and preserved her DNA in a deep freeze. In 2003, 3 years after the species vanished, researchers attempted the impossible. They used Celia's DNA to clone a baby ibex, implanting the embryo into a domestic goat. Miraculously, the mother carried the pregnancy to term, and on July 30, 2003, a baby Pyrenean Ibex was born. For the first time in history, humans had reversed extinction, but the victory was heartbreakingly short. The clone was born with a severe lung defect and could not breathe. It died just 7 minutes later in the arms of the scientists who created it. Therefore, the Pyrenean Ibex holds the tragic title of being the only creature in history to go extinct twice. But those 7 minutes proved one thing: bringing the dead back to life is possible. Number 9. The gastric brooding frog. If the ibex is a story of tragedy, this next creature is a story of biological horror. The frog you are seeing on screen right now looks unremarkable, perhaps even boring, but the way it gave birth was the stuff of nightmares. Discovered in Australia in the 1970s, the gastric brooding frog did not lay eggs in water like a normal amphibian. Instead, the mother swallowed her fertilized eggs. Her stomach then stopped producing acid, turning her own digestion system into a living womb. The tadpoles grew inside her gut, safe from predators. When they were fully formed, the mother would open her mouth and vomit up fully developed baby frogs. It was a biological miracle. However, just a few years after they were discovered, they vanished. Pollution and fungus wiped them out, and by 1983, they were gone. But scientists are obsessed with this unique stomach ability. Therefore, they want it back. In 2013, a team of researchers launched the Lazarus Project. They took dead tissue that had been frozen for 40 years and injected the DNA into the eggs of a distant cousin. To the shock of the scientific world, the cells began to divide. They created living embryos of an extinct species. Although the embryos died after a few days, the team proved that the blueprints for this monster are still readable. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before we see a frog vomit up its own babies once again. Number 8. The thylacine. You might know this creature better by its nickname, the Tasmanian tiger. Looking at the footage on screen right now, your brain might be confused. It has the head of a wolf, the stripes of a tiger, and the stiff, rod-like tail of a kangaroo. That is because it wasn't a dog or a cat at all. It was the largest carnivorous marsupial of modern times. It carried its young in a pouch, but it hunted with the stealth of a shadowy assassin. The thylacine was once the apex predator of Tasmania, an island at the bottom of the world. It was famous for its terrifying jaw, which could open up to 80 degrees wide enough to fit a human head inside. But in the early 20th century, farmers grew paranoid that these tigers were eating their sheep. Therefore, the government placed a bounty on their heads. They were hunted mercilessly until only one remained. The last, named Benjamin, died in a zoo in 1936. Tragically, he died because a zookeeper forgot to unlock his sleeping quarters, leaving him to freeze to death in the cold Tasmanian night. But Benjamin might not be the end of the story. Because the thylacine went extinct so recently, we have incredibly well-preserved specimens. There are even entire pups preserved in jars of alcohol in museums. Currently, a company called Colossal Biosciences has poured millions of dollars into a project to bring them back. They have already sequenced the thylacine genome. Their plan is to take stem cells from a living relativa, tiny marsupial called the fat-tailed donart, and edit the DNA until it matches the Tasmanian tiger. Therefore, within our lifetime, we could see these striped ghosts stalking through the Tasmanian bush once again. Number C. The moa. If you are afraid of birds, you might want to look away. We are used to birds being small, fluttering creatures that we can shoo away with a wave of our hand. But in New Zealand, before humans arrived, birds were the monsters. The creature you are seeing on screen right now is the moa, and it is the tallest bird that has ever lived. Some species of moa stood up to 12 feet tall. To put that into perspective, that is twice the height of a grown man. They weighed over 500 pounds and possessed massive, powerful legs capable of breaking bones with a single kick. They had no wings, not even tiny vestigial ones. They were strictly ground-dwelling giants that ruled the forests for millions of years. But their size made them a target. When the first humans arrived in New Zealand in the 13th century, they saw the MOA not as a monster, but as a walking buffet. The birds had never seen humans before and had no fear of them. They were hunted to extinction in less than 100 years. However, because they lived in a relatively cool climate and died out recently, their DNA is everywhere. Scientists have found moa bones with flesh and feathers still attached. Harvard University researchers have already reconstructed the genome of the little bush moa almost entirely. The plan to resurrect them involves using emus as surrogate mothers. The only question scientists are asking now isn't, can we do it, but where do you put a 12-foot bird in the modern world? Number says, the dodo. We use the phrase dead as a dodo to describe something that is gone forever. We also use the dodo as a symbol of stupidity, imagining a bird so dumb that it simply waited to be eaten. But the creature you are seeing on screen right now deserves a better reputation. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was just fearless. It lived on the isolated island of Mauritius, where there were no predators. For thousands of years, it had no reason to be afraid of anything. It walked the forest floor in peace, evolving into a plump, flightless bird about 3 feet tall. When sailors arrived in the 17th century, the dodos didn't run away because they didn't know what an enemy looked like. They walked right up to the men with clubs. Between the hungry sailors and the rats and pigs they brought with them, the dodo was wiped out in just a few decades. But the dodo might be making a comeback. The same company bringing back the thylacine, Colossal Biosciences, has announced a massive project to resurrect this bird. They have successfully sequenced the dodo's full genome using DNA from old museum specimens. Their plan is to edit the genes of its closest living relative, the Nicobar pigeon. It sounds like a colorful pigeon into a 3-foot flightless bird, but the science is advancing rapidly. If they succeed, the dodo will no longer be a symbol of extinction, but a symbol of second chances. Number 5. The aurochs. When you look at a cow in a field today, you see a docile, slow-moving animal that provides us with milk and burgers. But that cow is a watered-down version of a true monster. The creature you are seeing on screen right now is the aurochs, the wild, furious ancestor of all modern cattle. And unlike a dairy cow, this beast was built for war. The aurochs was massive, standing over 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as a minivan. It had huge, forward-curving horns that it used to toss wolves and humans alike. It roamed across Europe, Asia, and North Africa for thousands of years. Julius Caesar described them in his writings, saying they were almost the size of elephants and that they spared neither man nor beast. The last wild aurochs died in a Polish forest in 1627, but because modern cows are their direct descendants, the aurochs' DNA is technically still alive. It is just scrambled and diluted. This has led to a different kind of distinction called backbreeding. Scientists are taking primitive breeds of cattle that still carry aurochs-like traits and breeding them together, generation after generation, to bring out the ancient genes. Projects like the Tauros program are already producing animals that look terrifyingly similar to the original beast. These new aurochs are being released into the wilds of Europe to act as natural grazers, meaning that if you go hiking in the wrong forest a few years from now, you might come face to face with the same monster that terrified the Romans. Number 4. The woolly rhinoceros. When we think of the Ice Age, we usually think of the mammoth, but stomping through the snow right beside it was a creature that was arguably even more dangerous. The animal you are seeing on screen right now is the woolly rhinoceros. Imagine a modern rhino, which is already a 2-ton tank of muscle and rage, but cover it in thick, shaggy fur and give it a front horn that is nearly a meter long. This beast, known scientifically as Koholodonta, roamed the frozen plains of Europe and Asia. It was built for the cold, with a massive hump on its shoulder to support the muscles needed to sweep that giant horn through the deep snow to find grass. Early humans hunted them, and we know this because we have found cave paintings that show men fleeing from these horned giants. But unlike dinosaurs, which left only stones behind, the woolly rhino left behind its own flesh. Because they lived in the deep freeze of Siberia, we have found mummified bodies that look like they died yesterday. In 2014, hunters found a baby woolly rhino named Sasha that was 34,000 years old. It was so well preserved that it still had its strawberry blonde fur and its last meal in its stomach. Therefore, geneticists have access to incredible DNA samples. The challenge isn't finding the code. It is finding a mother. The closest living relative is the Sumatran rhino, which is critically endangered and much smaller. But if science can bridge that gap, we could see these shaggy tanks bulldozing through the snow once again. Number 3. The saber-toothed tiger. If there is one animal that represents the primal fear of early humanity, it is Tizwan. The Smilodon, or saber-toothed tiger, is the ultimate nightmare of the Stone Age. Look at the skull on the screen. Those canine teeth grew up to 11 inches long. They were not designed for chewing. They were precision instruments designed to slice through the throat of a struggling victim, severing the arteries in seconds. These cats were not like the sleek tigers of today. They were built like bears, massive, muscular, and powerful. They didn't chase prey for miles. They wrestled it to the ground. And unfortunately for our ancestors, humans were on the menu. The reason we might be able to bring them back is thanks to a sticky trap in Los Angeles called the La Brea tar pits. Thousands of these cats got stuck in the tar while trying to eat trapped mammoths, leaving us with millions of perfectly preserved bones. Scientists have already mapped the genome of the saber-tooth. The plan for resurrection is to use the African lion as a surrogate. By using CRISPR gene editing technology, scientists want to edit lion DNA to include the genes that create those massive teeth and heavy muscles. It is a terrifying thought, taking the king of the jungle and turning it into something that used to eat our ancestors for breakfast. But the technology is getting closer every day. Number 2. The Neanderthal. We have talked about bringing back animals, but now we enter the most controversial territory of all. What if the species we bring back isn't a beast, but a person? The creature, or rather, the human you see on screen, is the Neanderthal. For a long time, we thought of them as dumb cavemen. But science has proven us wrong. They were intelligent. They made art. They used tools. They buried their dead, and they even had larger brains than we do. They lived in Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years before mysteriously vanishing around 40,000 years ago, just as modern Homo sapiens arrived, but they are not entirely gone. Most people watching this video right now have between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA in their own bodies. We didn't just fight them. We mated with them. Because we have found their bones in cool, dry caves, scientists have successfully sequenced the entire Neanderthal genome. We have the complete blueprint to build one. Professor George Church, a leading geneticist at Harvard, famously said that the technology to clone a Neanderthal is already here. All that is needed is an adventurous female human to act as a surrogate mother. This raises ethical questions that are more terrifying than any dinosaur. If we brought a Neanderthal back, would it have human rights? Would we put it in a zoo? Or would we send it to school? Would it be lonely, the only member of its species in a world of 8 billion Homo sapiens? It is the ultimate scientific forbidden fruit, and while no one has done it yet, the temptation to look our ancient cousins in the eye might be too strong to resist forever. Number 1. The woolly mammoth. We have reached the number 1 spot, and it belongs to the poster child of This is the animal that started the whole conversation. The woolly mammoth is not just an extinct animal. It is an icon of the ice. These shaggy giants ruled the northern hemisphere for millennia, surviving the harshest conditions Earth could throw at them. They are the prime candidate for resurrection for one simple reason. We have everything we need. We have found mammoths frozen in the permafrost, with liquid blood still in their veins. In 2013, scientists found a specimen so fresh that when they cut into the meat, it was red. This high-quality DNA has allowed teams at Colossal Biosciences to move forward with a concrete plan. They are not just trying to clone a mammoth, they are trying to save the world. Their plan involves creating an elephant-mammoth hybrid that can live in the Arctic. Why? Because mammoths were actually geoengineers. By knocking down trees and stomping on the snow, they kept the ground frozen, preventing greenhouse gases from escaping the permafrost. Therefore, bringing them back isn't just about seeing a cool monster. It is about fighting climate change. The team aims to have the first calves born by 2027. Imagine that. Within a few years, we could see herds of these furry titans walking across the tundra of Siberia, reclaiming the land they lost 4,000 years ago. It is the most ambitious biological project in human history, and if it works, it will prove that extinction is not forever. From frogs that vomit babies to the return of the mammoth, science is on the verge of rewriting history. Which of these animals would you be most excited or terrified to see in real life? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. The future is going to be wild.